Alright guys, here's something to consider. So the US has banned all Huawei products and exports. The Chinese telecoms giant is literally being crippled within the United States. But many of their products are preferred because they're immune to NSA spying. But ironically enough, they're accused of spying and mining data for the Chinese government and saying that they're a minion of the government. Critics of that policy respond by saying that the US government is a minion of our corporations, in an ironic sort of twist. But is it true? Are our governments really hypocrites? Let's find out. So, the White House claims that Huawei is an instrument of Beijing's state authorities as a risible form of guilt projection. The Trump administration's ban on Huawei is nothing more than U.S. government abusing its state power to hamper a Chinese competitor from outperforming American tech corporations. Huawei's products are reputedly cheaper and smarter than U.S. rivals. Some observers also point out that the Chinese technology is invulnerable to hacking by the American spy agency, the NSA, further adding to its consumer appeal. Outperformed on market principles, the U.S. government takes a legalistic, propagandistic sledgehammer to smash Huawei from the marketplace in order to bestow an unfair advantage to inferior American corporations. So just who exactly is being an instrument for whom? Governments in all nations, of course, use their legislative, fiscal, and policy resources to try to build up key companies for their national economic development. It's standard practice throughout history and the world over. Governments can use subsidies and giants to boost companies or tariffs to shield them from foreign competition. The article goes even further to say, the U.S., however, is a stellar example of how government intervenes strenuously at every single stage in the market to benefit private corporations without massive injections of public money for grants, tax deductions, subsidies, and so on. American corporations would not have risen to the scale they have, as Michael Parenti documents in Democracy for the Few. This relationship, of course, negates the myth of U.S. free market capitalism. In reality, American corporations are publicly supported entities whose profits go to private shareholders. The overreaching agents for this process of centrally planned corporations, capitalism is the American government. I can't read today. The overarching agent for this process of centrally planned corporate capitalism is the American government. Centrally planned corporate capitalism, aka corporate fascism. From its earliest days as a European colony, it was the newfound federal authorities who rolled back frontiers with the Native Americans through genocidal war in order to benefit cattle and cereal companies, mining magnates, transport and telecoms, oil firms, and firearms manufacturers. In its young years as an imperial power, it was Washington that organized and dispatched federal troops to wage wars in the Caribbean and Latin America, all for the sole benefit of Wall Street and the expanding agro-industry. Retired Marine Major General Smedley Butler, in his 1930s, in his 1930s book War is a Racket, described the American military as a henchman for U.S. corporate profits. But without the government acting as a recruiter, financier, and commander-in-chief, the U.S. Army could not function as a henchman for the corporations. Let's take a few specific examples in history to illustrate the instrumental role of the U.S. government advancing or defending corporate interests. In 1953, President Eisenhower authorized the coup in Iran organized by the CIA and Britain's MI6. The main objective of the intervention was to seize Iranian oil. 5 U.S. corporations subsequently exploited the Iranian feast until the revolution in 1979 kicked them out, along with the American puppet dictator Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. It's a fair bet that current military threats from the Trump administration against Iran are prompted by a strategic desire to reclaim American corporate interests. Oh yes, they tied it in with Iran. Brilliant. That's what they're saying. And if you look at history and recent news and so forth, it would seem that this country is not truly a democracy or a republic. This country is a corporate fascist country. We are fascists. Our government is a fascist government. The only difference between us and Nazi Germany is we never murdered 4 million people. Actually, we murdered a fuck ton of Indians in the beginning. Or rather, the government did. We weren't there, obviously. But the government murdered a fuck ton of Indians. If this article's correct, then that was a corporate fascist action. And the only way to prevent that would be to create a free market and separate the state and market. The state cannot regulate the market or have any contact with the market. That would cleanly prevent it. Do what Brazil did and make it illegal for politicians to take bribes or any sort of large donations from companies with illicit interests in state power. Now, the article goes on further in a number of areas here, talking about Guatemala. Jacobo Arbenz set out to nationalize the underused agricultural land to benefit the rural poor. His land reforms involved expropriating properties belonging to the American-owned United Fruit Company. As William Blum detailed in Killing Hope, acting on United States interests, Washington intervened with a CIA-backed coup against Arbenz, which subsequently led to decades of mass murder of indigenous Guatemalans under U.S.-backed military dictatorships. And following the Cuban Revolution in 1959, one of the main protagonists of U.S. military invasion of the island, and for covert sabotage efforts, the American soft drinks industry headed up by Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They feared the nationalization of sugar plantations by the Castro government would hit their profits. John F. Kennedy may have been assassinated by powerful U.S. state forces working in cahoots with American corporate interests because he didn't adopt a sufficiently aggressive policy. Well, or towards Cuba after the Bay of Pigs fiasco in 1961. Yeah, he also didn't want to go to war in Vietnam and was largely putting the screws to a lot of different people. There were several people that tried to kill him. Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was close to both industries, duly obliged by paving the way for all-out war in Indochina after 1964. The 2 million Vietnamese were killed, as were some 58,000 U.S. troops. Then, of course, the 2003 war in Iraq, killing over 1 million civilians and maiming tens of thousands of Americans. It was seen as a pretext for grabbing Iraqi oil for U.S. corporations, like Halliburton, for whom then Vice President Dick Cheney was previously an executive board member. And now the present-day warmongering towards Venezuela and Iran, Washington is openly touted by White House National Security Advisor John Bolton as being about U.S. corporate lust for the country's oil reserves, which are reckoned to be the biggest on the planet. Corporate fascism, people. It exists in this country. Our government is a corporate fascist government. Release the market, no regulations, free market, and then separate the market and the state. Plain and simple. Corporate interest will not affect politics. Political interest will not affect the free market. That way, corporate fascism would be impossible. We need to stop this. We need to vote for people who won't give in. And if not, we might as well have a revolution on our hands. Maybe we should revolt. This government is criminal. That's all I got to say about that. Thanks for listening.